ready to roll?
All right.
Let's go.
Welcome to the discussion session Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. Mr. McGill, please review the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight's agenda, we have the introduction of an ordinance setting the public hearing date for an ordinance amending the 2025 budget for revenue and expenditures not anticipated as part of the 2025 budget. We do this every year. Essentially, that is just a way to sort of pull together all of the different things that have been approved by the commission throughout the course of the year and some additional revenues that were unanticipated, put them all into an ordinance so that everything is sort of codified and approved. We also have a consideration of a resolution to adopt initiatives to be recognized as a bird town through Bird Town PAA program. The Nature Conservancy is going to do the heavy lifting on that. There's a $100 application fee. They need the resolution to actually make the application. So, and then we have the consideration for an agenda item for our 2026 flow monitoring program. You heard about that last commission meeting in discussion session from Gateway Engineering. This is for to make sure that we are in compliance with the phase 2 consent order and final reporting requirements for the municipalities' GROW grant projects that we've done very well in terms of getting those programs. So that's all we have on the agenda, Mr. President.
Birdtown seems like the natural extension of Tree City, doesn't it?
What's next now? What's
We're an arboretum.
It's a slippery slope, you know?
Slippery Let's go to, thank you very much, Keith. Let's go to Social Services Coordinator.
Jackie, come on up. So Commission will remember late in 2023, we started discussing including a social services coordinator position in conjunction with the delivery of the police services. You also remember that we opted not to go with a co-responder model,
Right.
But to go with a resource delivery model. We brought Jackie on board September of 2024. And she's done some amazing work, and I think you'll see through what she's going to share with you, we've started to be able to better address a lot of the mental health calls that we receive. And we've also, Jackie's really kind of done a great job of expanding, I think, what even the chief had originally envisioned when we started talking about this position, to be able to deliver some other services to our residents. So I'll let you take over.
Okay, thank you. So it's been a pretty great year. Everybody has been wonderful, and this couldn't have asked for a better town to work for. Everybody's been so supportive. So I want to just, thank you for keeping me on for a year and longer so I can keep doing all the work that I'm doing. So kind of some things that I wanted to point out is the role of a police social worker is multifaceted. Especially in a resource delivery model such as this one, where I'm not exclusively co-responding. A lot of the work and the heavy lifting and everything goes into like the behind the scenes work, the building connections with community members and with families and organizations, and just becoming a familiar face that people know who I am and they know what I can do, and they know that they don't have to call the police for everything, and that I can ease some of the burden on the officers as well. So, for example, like I can respond on scene whenever an officer requests me. Their role is to make sure that the scene is safe, make sure nothing too out of control is happening. And then once the situation has been calmed down, then I can step in and finish what's going on. And, as you might remember before I came here, that was the bulk of my experience, was doing crisis intervention in-home, directly with the people to divert from hospital presentations, get them to the right services and get what they needed so that things didn't have to keep happening. Through all of that, like by becoming somebody that is familiar to everybody, I have worked to reduce frequent contacts with people throughout the town, mostly by identifying who their supports are, figuring out what I can do to bolster their already existing supports. And through the different work that I have done, we've noticed that the voluntary hospital admissions have gone down. Last year's 55, we were up to 44 201 presentations, so we went down. Some of those were due to being able to meet with people, speak with them over the phone, and emphasize what the role of an ER is versus being able to use their own natural coping skills versus finding services, like preventing people from having to go to the ER to use services that I am able to complete, like getting them into treatment. Being able to do that has come from like all of the networking I've done with basically every private practicing therapist in the county. And through networking through different services that I've worked with, and just pulling all of these strings together. The other thing I do want to point out is that working with the officers, arrests have also gone down. Find my exact number. We went from 17 in 2024 to 9 arrests and dispositions to resolve. So the crisis service went from 15 to 2.
Wow.
Because Resolve is a very overburdened service.
Yeah.
They have almost no staff and it's difficult to get a hold of them.
Right.
So instead of utilizing Resolve, we have been using the services that already exist in our town and that I'm able to follow through with and make sure that a created crisis and treatment plan has been followed. Another couple of things is I connect with CYF, I connect with legal services and follow through people, the different experiences they're going through involving the justice system, children, youth and families, all of those different things. There's quite a few caseworkers I'm on a first name basis with, and the women's legal aid knows me pretty well at this point, because I also try to be included whenever there's PFAs to prevent more instances from happening and make sure that people have the resources they need to feel safe. And part of all of that has been networking and pulling together every resource that this town has to offer. And there's so many of them. But I also try to complement what the police department is doing. Like I attended and helped put together the hands-free Levo, where we helped people get their Bluetooth connected and their CarPlay working and explain how it worked. Also, number one, so people don't get pulled over because of the Paul Miller law, and also to make sure that people are safe and using their technology appropriately. I also have connected with the Mount Lebanon Mutual Aid. Adrienne and I think, talk a couple of times a week about all the different supports that they can help me with and that I can help them with. And let's see, there's a bunch of other people I've reached out to.
School district,
Yes, yeah.
that's a big one.
Yeah, I'm in contact with the schools. I help the schools sort of reach out into the community and make sure that the students are safe in ways that are traditionally more difficult for the average guidance counselor to do. It's pretty easy for them to call me, say, hey, have you heard anything? Can you get resource to this family that we're worried about? And then like 2 emails later, we have it done. I can follow up.
Yeah, you've spent some time at the library as well.
Yes.
A little bit. There's some people that don't know me as Jackie from the police department. They know me as the lady at the library. So people have asked me that. Are you the lady that's at the library? Yes, I'm one of the many ladies at the library, but I'm the one that's there every Wednesday occupying a study room. Me and now my student hang out there every week. I get asked all kinds of things. I've had somebody walk in to do a brief like existential therapy session with me. That was an interesting one. A lot of helping people get connected to basic needs, like how to access Penny, how to use Compass, where do you go for Social Security, disability, just kind of those basic things that you kind of look and go, a social worker should be helping you with that, but how do you get a social worker? So that's why I go and sit at the library. We serve not just the people of Mount Lebanon, but I've had people from Robinson, somebody from Bellevue came down to see me because there was nobody near her that could help her. Bethel Park, Carnegie, like all over the South Hills come to the library to try and get help from me.
What time is that on Wednesdays?
2 to 4.
2 to 4.
Every Wednesday, 2 to 4, barring like an officer needing me on scene
sure.
or
Do
something
you
like
get
that.
any of the kids?
Hmm?
Do you get any of the kids at all?
Once or twice I've gotten some kids that come to talk to me. Over the summer, I did some events with the teen librarian and the kids librarian. We had Lego time.
Yes, you started that with the police, right?
Mhm.
I think that's cool.
Yeah, the officers absolutely had a blast. They loved it. They had a really fun time doing that with the kids, and the kids had fun seeing and like building more trust with them and realizing like, oh, these are people that like to build rocket ships with me out of Legos. So that's something that if we can do it again, I would do it again in a heartbeat. It was so fun and it was such a nice community opportunity. And the parents definitely seemed to appreciate being able to go, here you go play with some Legos in the air conditioning for a little while. We'll see you later. So that was a good time. So I'm at the library every week. I also coordinate with the 6 other police social workers throughout the county. We share resources, we come up with programming together. Sometimes we communicate if we have shared people involved. O'Hara's position is relatively new, so I've been helping her develop her policies about what to do. And also when Peters Township adopted the similar model to us, that social worker came and trained with us for a week so that they can do the same model that we do.
So are the 6 all in our county, or are we counting like,
They're all,
yeah, in Allegheny County? It's interesting.
they're mostly in the North Hills except for Baldwin
Yeah.
Borough.
Yeah.
Other places around the South Hills are interested in replicating this model.
Smart.
So that's gonna be a paperwork thing to handle.
So if I could just add, so again, like Mr. McGill said, this program has expanded far beyond what we even thought it could in terms of what Jackie can offer and what she can bring to the community. And we've been, more than satisfied and really very surprised at how it's taken off this early in just a year. We told her in the first year, really, it is about building relationships, establishing that, having those deep-rooted connections in order to reach out and call people. And again, she spends most of her time doing that. You can see she does it very well. And so one of the telling stats, I think Commissioner Flynn, when we first started this program, I think we had a conversation about data and metrics and how we can actually quantify some things. Obviously, there's certain things that are very difficult to quantify when it comes to this type of work, whether it's what you prevent, the amount of things that you, prevent from occurring. We really can't quantify that, but what you can see, if you look at the page that notes the minutes of call, minutes of time on mental health calls. And by the way, I have to mention this, that, Yvette Grandillo and Janice Ward are both our records clerks, and they extrapolated this data literally page by page in each incident report. They had to literally manually go through. We don't have the means to extrapolate this data. This is actually manually extracted, and it's done by really tedious time and effort by both women that do amazing work for us every day. So when we ask them to do this, this is not just an easy lift. And so it's worth mentioning the amount of time and effort that they put into this too. And they really help us to not only deliver the service, but they also help us to really track what we're doing as we're doing it. So it's worth mentioning. We couldn't be prouder of both of them and the work that they do.
This is when you need to ask commission for a budget line item to do the software that'll do it for you. Right?
I think that's what's going on.
There's a little plug there.
I didn't say it. For the record, Mr. Gill.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So when I look at this, right, so I'm looking at your CAD calls. So 2025, 331, right? That's only up to 1013, I get that.
Yeah, that's anything labeled mental health, or abnormal behavior, or suicidal comments. Those are the monikers that they search for that.
Cool. So down below, the numbers,
Yep.
for the most part, correspond to that, right? With the exception of minutes and that kind of thing. So I'm looking at 2 things. So I'm looking at the disposition of arrests, right? Because that was the first, like we cited mental health issues, when we started talking about this, it was related to police, and there were calls that we know that we don't need police response for, criminal response. So that was one. So I'm happy to see that the arrests have gone down, right? Because we knew that should have been the case, right? But with the resources we had, that was the option. So that's good. The other one I'm looking at is the age groups.
Yeah.
So when I look at the age groups and I add the teen years, so 11 to 15 is the number 1. The number 2, but not by a lot, is 76 and plus. So it's obvious that the older crowd will need access to services. And we know we have that community here. But if I put together ages 11, 15, and 16 to 20, which are our teen years, right? That's 48% of all of those CAD calls.
Yeah.
So the question I have is, like, how do we look at this data? And then how do we use that to create goals for the next year? Like, when I look at this and I say 48%, let's just call it half of our calls are 11 to 15, 16, 20 are teen years, my mind goes to half of our programming should be aimed at that age group.
Well, we have Outreach South though, don't forget.
No, I'm just saying in general, like, that's just the, like, so how do we then take this data, which is good to have, and where do we go from that? So like, do we have goals for, like, now that we've got a couple years of data that we can look at, do we sit back and say, all right, now I've done this for a year, I think we can improve this by 10%, or I think we can maybe do this, or, maybe we could see, whatever. I'm making this up, but that's kind of how I look at this, and I'm wondering if we thought about any of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that, I don't know if Jackie mentioned this or not, if she did, I missed it, but we sent her to become a practitioner for mental health first aid, which essentially is first aid for any issues resolving to consumers of mental health services. And so with that, she's gonna start offering that to various members of the community and different opportunities for members of the community to do that. And such, that can assist with aiding in the most vulnerable population, the very young and the very old, which obviously are the most notable in terms of their consumer of these services.
Yeah.
And so again, it's an ability to educate and give people tools to help their neighbors, help their friends, and help everybody else that they see struggling in order to move the needle in the right direction in that sense. So absolutely, we look at that, and we look at strategies in terms of what we can do. And I think the mental health first aid program that Jackie's gonna spearhead is really gonna be a big part of that in
Well,
terms of targeting some of those individuals.
How do we get more information about that? Like, that's kind of what I'm looking at, like, this is what we learned, and the numbers are great, but like, this is what we learned, this is what we think we can do, and this is the result we think we're gonna have. Like again, I just come back to the 11 to 20-year-olds, if it's 50% of the calls, I'm looking for like, these were the 5 most reported types of calls, and I think we've got some of that here based on disposition. But, in that age group, what is it? Is it suicide? Is it bullying? I'm not asking for an answer now, but like, if 50% of our customer base, for lack of a better term, is the majority of them are coming in with one thing, like, I'm looking for like, how do we absorb that information and then move that to the next step? Like, maybe we should create a program for that. Kind of makes sense what I'm asking for?
To follow up on you talking about the numbers, age 46 to 50. It dropped from 65 down to 24 so far this year. It went 2, 10, 65, then a drop again. Any guesses of why that significant spike for that?
I can tell you it's a stressful age. Personal experience.
Kids are my age.
I was gonna say, it's been a while since
But yeah, like, I think that's a fair question. Some outliers in the data, like, hey, we see a spike here, I don't know.
But I think
Maybe one person just really loved the
I think-
service and they referred their friends.
other goals, which I think are keeping our officers safe. So I recall that was a big goal in this
Yeah.
process.
No, absolutely.
And how do you feel about their mental health? Has this helped our officers as well to have Jackie on staff?
I mean, I think she can speak to in terms of the amount of people that come talk to her, but I can tell you from our perspective, the comfort level has, just her being around
Right.
allows officers to stop back and talk to her. And they know it's confidential. They know that, anything that they talk to her about is not shared with Deputy Chief Trucci, myself. They really, I think, have opened up to you in terms of that. Also with critical incidents, and being able to have her there
Right.
to do a hot wash and an after action.
Sure. And do you cover fire too for critical incidents?
I can. I've tried to reach out to Mike Stoner a couple times for the peer support, and we've kind of missed each other, but that's been a thing that I've been wanting to do,
Yeah.
is try to beef up the peer
Sure.
support.
Yeah,
So-
it's interesting. I haven't had a lot of interaction directly with you, but I interact with enough of the police officers who are down in the fire kitchen regularly, and they've all said great things. I've heard fantastic things all the way around. I don't know if they knew I was commissioner and they were just putting in a plug for you, but I would take it as genuine, a genuine positive all the way around. I think I definitely like where Commissioner Grella is going in terms of just general questions. You guys all know I love data, but what's the story, right? For you guys, there's a story in here. that you know is happening, how do we tease that out, just for an audience like elected officials or the general public to understand? Right, because again, there is a lot of detail, right, that is important, and it's confidential, and that's important to keep that way. But how do we understand, right, kind of the broader story, to Commissioner Grella's point, or to Commissioner Silverman's point, about, you know, the benefit to the police department, and I can see it in certain data points. The benefit to residents and certain age groups, and I can show it to you in these data points. I like data, I will happily just dig into this, but I think having the narrative around it also would be helpful.
It's like what Chief said in the beginning, it's like the absence of the negative is hard to prove, right?
Yeah.
So,
It is,
you know,
it is.
we could put a dollar amount on life value and things like that, but it's silly, right? And trying to say, well, how many arrests did we prevent is probably as close as we're gonna get. I think that's a really, really good metric, especially considering the goals that we stated in the beginning. So, I don't know, I feel like this position, you in this position is an asset to the community. And understanding, like what Commissioner Flynn said, what's that story? I know Laura's covered some stuff in the past too, but you know, a sum up, maybe an article will let people know. I think this position, what outreach does, is really good for the community, especially the younger, you know, where there's just a lot of issues at that age, and having those positions here is huge. It's great.
To that point, I know one of the goals in you know, going down this path was to try to reduce the number of repeat calls.
Yep.
And
that
I'd
was
be
done.
interested in kind of
That's
hearing
great.
about how that's occurred.
Well, we've looked at that, and actually, we were talking about that today extensively. You know, it seems like there's a little bit of a dip when you look at some of the repeat calls. I think when you see there's some data on that related to how many times we went somewhere 5 times, 10 different residences. Obviously, this is an individuals that are very troubled and need a lot of attention for whatever reason. But I also think if you look at it, you look at the time on scene, it's reduced to under an hour significantly. All of the calls that we had that were over an hour are far less now, which also is the other goal of the program, is to free up officers in order to, you know,
Do what they do
allow
well.
them to do different things. So there is kind of that correlation when it comes to that. So I do think that number, while it's going to change and alter with 14,000 households and 34,000 residents, there's a very good chance that number is going to always be somewhere around that 10, 12, somewhere in there. I don't know that, you know, so I think it's a very manageable number of 10, you know, residences out of 14,000 that need that much attention. So when you really look at that, you know, I think that's something we talked about. That, you know, we don't see that as an excessive number that's not manageable from the resources that we have. Yeah.
And also interested to know what are, from you know, everyone's perspective, what are lessons learned so far?
I think the biggest thing that I learned is the value of engaging in people's natural supports, what's already in the community, what's in their family, and trying to get creative and thinking out of the box and what we need to do to support people until they get to their next best permanent support.
I was reading about the intern that you've brought on who's gonna do sort of emergency counseling until someone can see a counselor. That's just fabulous. Are you kidding? Who offers that?
Yeah.
You know, that's
Is there something you feel we need that we don't have? Out of all of this, out of the people that you saw, the different groups, the different needs out there, is there one thing that kind of rises above the rest as something that we don't have that we should?
That's a loaded question because like the things that we should have, can they really exist?
No, but listen, we operate in a world where there's more that we need to do than we can fund, because a lot of these things take money, and that's what we live with here, right? So when we ask our directors and chiefs, you know, through the budget process, what are the things that you need to do to fund your departments? It always comes down to, here are 20 things we need, and here are 5 things we can do. And we all together make those decisions, right? So I know it's tough, but this is kind of like, it's what we're here for.
No, I mean, the only thing I'll add to that is we talked about doing sort of more of a consortium and helping our neighbors. You know, it is proven and shown that, you know, when you help your neighbors reduce not only crime, but also consumers' mental health services, that also helps Mount Lebanon. Because again, folks that are in this vein, typically are transient and will show up here or be here or exist here or have issues here and be encountered here. So at the end of the day, it does help us to support our neighbors. So as we move this program forward, we know that there's going to be opportunities to help our neighbors potentially with Jackie and her interns and utilizing that program in order to do that. We know that that's going to take some resources to kick that off. In order to, again, whether it's existing Castle Shannon or Dormont, or any of our other immediate bordering neighbors, it really will help us. And it will help them as well. So, what we have learned is this model, I think, fits us the best, and we've shown that over the last year. I think as we've talked to other chiefs and other police administrators, they feel like they're starting to model the resource delivery program as opposed to co-response. They're not really able to support a co-responder, a true model like they thought they could.
Sure.
And they're realizing that the resource delivery part of this is really what's, preventing those interactions. And that's something that, I think we're moving forward, really focus on. So I would.
It's like an issue of
What's that?
scale.
Yeah.
An issue of scale.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to that end, one of the things that, I'm curious about, because you'd mentioned, you're working on policies and helping other people develop their policies. How do we think about kind of what the policy toolkit is for this specific set of capabilities within the department, right? I know there's probably some things that aren't necessarily sitting in, what's the name of the platform? Your police procedures, Lexible, thank you. So I assume that there may be a separate set of policies that you're thinking about developing, right? Things that need to evolve, right? That are unique to this use case. How do we make sure that we're developing that policy framework so that it is either replicatable or expandable in a way that is going to, again, I don't want to have to stand up 15 different departments that can provide this when we can conceptually understand it from a policy perspective and explain it to the next department and say, here's the policy framework we utilize, here's how the services work, here are the costs to the taxpayers, here are the benefits that we have seen, right? So that they can quickly translate that as opposed to it being a more casual conversation, right? Again, I know you're only a year in, right? This stuff takes time to evolve, but at least be thinking about kind of what that policy framework looks like so that, again, you don't have to think about that, when it's time to go bring in that next, municipality.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, as part of the initial discussion, you'll remember that we had a conversation about where do we start, right? Do we essentially, do we offer this for some of our neighboring communities and try to bring them in for, I'll say, for a larger program? In the end, the decision was, hey, look, we need to start this on our own. Figure it out.
Right.
And then develop sort of that policy of how to move it forward. There are a number of ways this potentially could go. You're all aware of the fact that SHACOG is undergoing some organizational changes. The police chiefs already have a group as part of SHACOG. So there's a couple different ways it could go, but I think to Commissioner Flynn's point, just starting to put together the pieces of what that looks like for anybody else that's interested in, and you and I, Chief, have had a number of conversations. The interest is definitely there.
Yes.
I think a lot of departments are struggling with the how.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just add one more thing, and this is gonna be a little bit harder to do, but, like when we looked at deer vehicle collisions, we looked at numbers from insurance companies and averages, and we knew that when we did the report, it was like every deer vehicle collision that we saved taxpayers $4,000. So when we cut them by 250, that's $1 million, right? So we can quantify that and I say monetize, but I don't mean it like make money off it, but we put numbers to that. If there are ways to put numbers to that, that would be really helpful, right? Just because we deal with, that's what we deal with in terms of spending taxpayer money. Now, I don't know that we could do it with a lot of this, but, like what's saving, 10 arrests worth in terms of resources to the community, time, money, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying. We again, talk a lot about this, and Deputy Chief and I tried to, as we knew this was approaching, tried to sort of quantify some of those things. You know, I will say, a lot of this work that Jackie does, you really can't put a price tag on, because of just the amount of sheer help she's giving people
Right.
that have suicidal ideations, or have, you know, too much to handle, or,
Right.
you know, aren't able to navigate life, and so she's giving them those tools. So I think that part of it is probably not going to be monetized, however, we recognize the significant value that brings to the residents of our community. However, we will look at this and do, you know, everything we can to, you know, again, quantify the other parts of it. But, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
I think about, because things you just, how do you put a dollar figure on preventing someone from committing suicide? You
Right.
can't.
you can't, yeah.
To say, look at something more economics, to say minutes on calls. That leads to say, okay, it was X number of calls, this officer, but, and to say, if fewer minutes total were being spent on calls, there is at least easier to have a dollar figure attached to that. You know, total minutes, you know, on the street on this versus, this would be a lower number. So I could see that and saying, be curious, taking that part of the chart. At least that, again, so much of this, you just, we don't know of the 50, look at disposition, social services, 50 so far this year are going, where did that prevent?
right.
And you just can't quantify that.
I know, like, you know, just as an example, it's kind of morbid, but, so the Army Corps of Engineers puts a valuation on someone's life, right? And they do that for, like, flooding. So if it costs $100 million to fix a flood, but only 2 people die every 20 years, they look at numbers like that and they say, it's worth the risk and not having a municipality spend $100 million. So I'm not saying we need to do a cost of life calculation, but there's probably some value we can assign to some of these things that we could say, you know, this position costs X and look at the value it delivers to the
Well,
municipality.
and I think, you know, when we say value, right, it's not necessarily dollar value, but that is probably the easiest way to put a figure, right? So yes, there are other ways of understanding value, but how, again, my concern is always, you know, 10 years from now, the economy is bad. How do we protect this role? Because it is important. Because it's providing value that people might not see. Right? And that, for me, is really the heart of where I'm trying to come at it from, is just how do we think about making sure that these roles are valued even more?
Yes.
And so that, yeah, if the question comes down, you know, because there will be a lot of people who will say, I would rather have an officer with a badge and a gun enforcing the law than I would having someone doing the squishy stuff, right? And that's just a reality that we in parts of the country face. So how do we protect from that, right? And tell the positive story as we go forward. So again, I love the data. I think this is great. And again, I've heard amazing things all the way around. But again, I would just continue to encourage that be kind of the thing to think about is how are we continuing to help community understand the value? Because again, I think, you know, as we see, right, people have convinced, you know, we all know that providing food to people is valuable, but SNAP is disappearing. So tides change, how do we protect from that?
And towards that end, I just want to make a plug right now for Jackie and the mutual aid group out of Facebook, because we have partnered with the municipality. Thank you, Keith, for your help. And we're going to start a small food pantry in the lobby, and we're also doing meal kits, which will be bagged, too much to go into. Jackie has been instrumental in helping with that so that we can reach people. One of the best things is all the relationships she has. It's just phenomenal, the number of people that she touches every day. And I call her and say, you know, can we do this? She says, oh yeah, sure, boom, boom, boom. Plugged in, very important to be plugged in.
Some of the most important relationships that she's developed is with resources that the county has that weren't willing to go
Right.
into communities and give her autonomy. So today we had a guy from County Mental Health who was teaching our officers, our watch commanders, how to do 302 commitments
Cool.
themselves. This way we
Yes.
don't have to go to the hospital,
Yeah.
have officers tied on.
Right,
You know,
Right.
it can just be a
Yeah,
smooth
time
process. So
saving.
these relationships are important as well.
very
And,
important.
and I think just by them accepting the position that she's in and seeing the value of it, and them opening up their resources to us says a lot as well.
I agree. No,
That's
it's,
huge.
it's really wonderful, very good. I think she's got deep reach into the community, very well known, much more so than we probably realize.
Any other questions?
It's more of a point, following up something that both Commissioner Flynn and Commissioner Spargo Wilson said. If people want to donate, with SNAP, going away for now and hopefully comes back very, very quickly. Someone says, I want to donate food, I want to write a check, I've got a restaurant gift certificate I'm not using, whatever. How do they do it?
We're pulling all that process together.
Together right now, yeah,
This
it's
is
in
a
process.
conversation we actually.
Started
Rachel
yesterday
and
morning.
on
Started
Friday
today.
and-
Yesterday.
And
today
reached
and
out,
yesterday.
so we are getting all of those
Yes.
details together. We
Yeah.
will push
Give us
those out.
just
as
a
soon as
little
we
bit
have
more time and we'll have it all.
packaged.
If I could, real quick, the one thing I really want to mention that we haven't mentioned yet, and I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier, is I really want to give credit to the men and women, the police officers who really supported this program. Because that really drives this program and makes it successful. It could have easily fallen flat had the officers not accepted it, had the officers not recognized the value, and had they not diverted a lot of resources in terms of the types of calls and the appropriate types of calls to Jackie. And I really want to give them a lot of credit for embracing this program. It was definitely a process, and I'm proud of them for doing that. And that definitely has helped her to become successful.
I've definitely spent some time in the cars, like thanking them and telling them that I appreciate it. But the thing that's the most telling is that every officer that I've said that to is, why would it be a problem? You're here to help me. Like, why would I have a problem? I wanted to plug one more thing that I'm doing that I didn't get a chance to mention. I'm trying to help with the hoarding issues that we sometimes get
Yes,
reported.
Yes,
I made a connection actually last year and it's just now paying off. So speaking of people that I know, it's a lady, her name is Jill Yesko, and she runs Discover Organizing and Safe Moves for Seniors.
yeah.
She was willing to work with us and like the other municipalities that have social workers to
Right.
try to come up with like a diversionary program for people that are getting like fines from code. Where the proposition right now is whatever fines would have been paid to the court instead go to Jill
Cool.
to fund her services, because she's like, this is my business, I have to get paid. So to pay Jill, and then us, one of the social workers comes in to do like
Right.
an initial evaluation. So we do the mental health part, she does the remediation plan, and then we present it.
That's good.
Okay, I'm gonna give you my husband and then. Hey, just saying.
Got some more paperwork we're figuring out on that, but it's in process. That just happened like last Thursday,
Great.
so.
Chief, I appreciate you thanking the officers. I also want to thank you and Deputy Chief, and even go back and Aaron should get some credit too, because this all happened, or at least we started talking about a lot of this, over the last couple of years, so I think certainly you two get a lot of credit for implementing this and, instilling that culture in
Right, it's the culture.
the department, yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much.
What is that?
We ran a little late on that one. We got Andrew popping up to do fee schedule. He's at a little disadvantage because he can't even make up time. He's starting after the next one starting already. All right.
She's all right.
All right, we got a big talk before.
Thank you, Commission. This is the official kickoff every year of the budget time. So we do have our budget sessions next month. But the fee schedule is always released prior to the budget on November 1st, generally the 1st of October or thereabouts, that the fee schedule is published online and made available to the Commission and to the general public for next year's proposed fee schedule. In general, for those watching at home or not understanding, the fee schedule are all those things that our municipal departments charge. And it's within the manager's ability to then set those if anything does come up during the year, but we try and capture everything we can of all the proposed fees that we have that are before the commission. So departments include, general government, finance, we have public information, planning, inspections, public works, all the recreation programs and offerings, fire, police, and parking. So all those fees are included within this fee schedule. Fee schedule published online shows you a color-coded increases, decreases, eliminations, and new fees that possibly could come online. And we'll show you last year's rate and this year's rate as well. So we sent a commission memo outlining the changes that comes from the departments. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have. It is published online and will be reviewed and then subsequently passed by resolution at the December meeting along with the budget.
Does anyone have any, we had a tiny little bit of conversation, but I don't think anybody has any objections to either the changes or the reasoning behind the changes this year.
No, I mean, one, thank you to Dave Donnell, he replied back with a couple of questions that I had. And I think more of just kind of the overall, for anybody looking at this, is saying, costs have gone up. And, you know, that's kind of a theme of going through here, saying, you know, increased cost for, you know, subscription services for digital reviews, or, you know, increased cost of scanning documents, or increased cost for catering rates or food, or, you know. So it's just, you know, so someone's why, that's some of the reasons why these numbers are going up.
Yep.
The only see these
I love
responses,
the color coding.
everybody else does not.
That was pre me, whoever that was that started that.
Yeah, I love that.
That's
It
been around
just-
for a long
It's
time.
like boom.
Yep.
Look right at it.
My only ask would be when the fee is the same, I would love to know when it was last changed.
Oh.
Not this year, but, right, because
That
it's
sounds
something.
like a really good thing for my new assistant.
There you
That sounds
go.
like
Yeah, put that down.
Yeah.
At some point, right, I mean, we set a
We had that call.
fee that it's like,
Why hasn't it changed, right?
yeah.
10
And
years.
it-
That's certainly.
I think the other thing to remember is these fees are all really set as cost recovery fees.
Right,
They're not really
exactly.
set to generate revenue.
No, correct.
100%.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good philosophy anyway.
Right, but assuming that our costs have gone up.
Sure.
That, one would assume that our fees would go up as well.
You know, and you bring up a good point, because obviously, like, we don't look at that in 10 years, 5
Right.
years, you know, we should at least examine it.
Sounds good.
And
Next.
some of them were contractually set. So it's just a reminder that I know we've sent those out in previous things, trash and stormwater fee and some of the other fees that are paid, those were notifications that went out for escalations over a certain, just a restatement, because some of that shows up in our,
Some of the fees are pass-through fees. The
Yes.
state now has a fee for building permits, so we just
Right.
pass that fee
That's
on.
right through.
Some of the fees for copying, those types of things are set through the right to know legislation, so we don't have the ability to do those, so.
appreciate it.
All right, moving on to my second topic.
Yep.
Hearing nothing else is the 2025 budget amendment. We do this every year. The budget, as you've heard me profess over the years, is a living document to us in Mount Lebanon. It is not a static document. So when we pass this budget in December of 2024, it's something we review at various points with the commission, but obviously at a department level and staff level, we do review budgets periodically, and especially during budget time for ourselves. You know, in July, August timeframe, when we're preparing for the 26 budget, we're also reviewing what's happening in 2025 as well. So that's really a heavy emphasis at that time. But these that are presented this evening is the budget amendment that were either done by the commission at the commission level that rise to a level that we think we should recognize the budget amendment for these things. So just briefly going through what the budget amendment is going through, we had received a recycling grant for the grinder that we purchased in 2024. So we did receive a grant for that of $200,000. It was an unknown if we were going to receive that at the time of budget last year, so it's an unanticipated revenue. The other two revenue items we'll go into with the expenditures. The Timber Creek stairs, that's just a timing issue. We didn't know if that was going to be paid out at the end of the year. It looked like it was going to be, and the contractor drug its feet. So we needed to recognize that we did finish that payout this year. We did not recognize it last year. The temporary chiller and rebuild of the compressor, we needed to recognize the full cost of that because it went a little longer than we were anticipating. We do have insurance proceeds that do offset that to a net of only $61,000 when you net those out. We had gym equipment that we had on for the Public Safety Center that was originally budgeted to be leased. We decided to buy it and save around $10,000 in interest over the term. It was better to just buy it outright, so we bought that outright. The animal control box, that's an upfit on an animal control vehicle. Due to the condition of the vehicle that we were gonna upfit, we needed to purchase a new vehicle, and we couldn't transfer the box. And so the South Hills Cooperative of Animal Control approved using escrow funds, which are from new municipalities in the last 7 to 8 years that have come on board, to use escrow funds that when they basically bought into the cooperative, to use those to upfit for a new box on the new truck. So we're gonna have 2 brand new animal control vehicles this year. So just came in, so we should have 2 of those. In addition, we have 2 other items. The insurance renewal, we've gone over that in June, how insurance increased mightily. Partly due to the other item on the budget amendment, having to do with rink repairs over the last 10 years. Finally, is the street tree management program. We did approve a consultant that's higher than what was budgeted, so we said we would put that as a budget amendment, so we did that and have set that forth here. So that's what we have.
Yep.
Thank you much.
And I'll see you in November.
Take a break, huh?
Yeah, see you in June. I'll see you November 6th
Have a
and
nice trip.
for our first budget session.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Way to catch us in.
All right, this is a review of amendments or possible amendments to the health and safety ordinance, or the chapter on health and safety in our code.
Correct. Thank you, commissioners. So I will say this topic started as an initiative both out of the Resiliency Board and through Commissioner Siegler, who in his professional life does a lot of work in other communities, so identified that many other communities around the country had standards in their ordinances related to specifically maintenance of commercial properties. So Mr. McGill asked me to kind of take this on and start looking into ordinance revisions and what we could do within our existing code if we needed a new section to possibly tackle this, or if it could fit within the existing code. I worked with Commissioner Siegler, Solicitor Phil Weiss, who Mr. Garfinkel's here from the Solicitor's office today. So thanks to everyone who chimed in on the project. Also, Commercial Districts Manager Eric Milliron and our Chief Building Inspector and Zoning Officer Rodney Sarver took a look at this as well. There were a few things that they also contributed, specifically from Rodney's office with relation to statewide building code standards and things like that. So in summary, Mount Lebanon does not have a property maintenance code per se. We've never adopted the International Property Maintenance Code that exists through the state, or we do have, however, provisions in Chapter 7 of the Municipal Code, which is related to health and safety, related to high grass and weeds, unsanitary matters and waste, environmental conditions of properties, feeding of deer, and some other items. So after we benchmarked property maintenance, specifically commercial property maintenance ordinances from about 10 or 12 other municipalities around the country. I looked at it, the solicitor looked at it, we reviewed against some sample language that Commissioner Siegler provided to us, just kind of gave us a guideline and framework for what he wanted to see as far as ordinance revisions and what he thought was a good starting point. We kind of all determined that the best place to put this all was within the existing chapter of the code. There are some additional sections added to the code on some specific provisions, which I can summarize. But mostly we determined rather than having an entire new part of the code, it was better to just incorporate this with what we already have, because we already have a lot of things in those specifically environmental conditions of property section that cover a lot of things such as sanitation, storage of materials, retaining walls, stormwater management, exterior of buildings, things like that. So there's already a lot in there. What this mostly proposes to do is just beef up a little bit for the standards that are already in there, with some specific call outs to landscaping to ensure that properties developed with landscaping plans that are approved by the planning board are maintained With that approved, in conjunction with the approved plant list that's in the code, as well as, continuing to maintain their landscaping through the landscaping plan that was approved as part of their land development plan. I know as the staff liaison to the planning board, that's something I have heard from the planning board many times over the years with regards to certain properties, that their landscaping was supposed to be something different. And so just to run through some of the other proposed changes to some other sections, specifically calling out items related to sidewalks, driveways, parking lots, specifically listing out some maintenance issues that can occur there. Referencing back to the statewide building code for items such as premise identification, specifically mentioning, right now, the title of the section is glazing, which essentially means windows, but specifically mentioning windows in the code, calling it windows and glazing, just to make that very clear for everyone reading it. Adding some commercial property standards related to properties in C1, C2 Central Business District and the R7 District, which allows limited first floor commercial uses. And just referencing specific standards for storefronts, exterior lighting, basement hatchways, sidewalks, unoccupied building and storefronts, and then spelling out liabilities as far as who is liable for what. I will also just say that the existing code, as I mentioned, has a separate section related to high grass and weeds. There's a separate section related to sidewalk maintenance, including clearing of snow and ice. That's contained within the streets and sidewalks section of the code. And then the administrative code, which is chapter 1 of the municipal code, covers penalties and violations for all ordinances contained within the entire code. So while there's no specific penalty standards in Chapter 7, Part 4, the environmental conditions section, it's covered by Chapter 1, the administrative code, that lists out any ordinance violation is subject to these following penalties. So I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have. Commissioner Siegler may have a little bit more to add since he was instrumental in moving this forward as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ian. I really appreciate you pulling this together along with the solicitor and everybody else, the advisory board, including the partnership. It's good to see you all here and support, hopefully. The impetus behind this was, I feel like the community has invested a lot in our commercial districts, that there's been a lot of taxpayer money that's gone into streetscapes and in essence trying to make our commercial districts as sort of healthy and vibrant as possible. And I feel that there's some property owners that haven't necessarily held up their end. And I think to be as responsible as we can be with taxpayer money, I think it's important that we have a higher standard and that we ask them to. I think we put them in a position where maintenance and improvements are justifiable and it can be recouped. And so I think it was time to sort of step in and say, look, it's time to do your part. We're trying to make a vibrant, healthy district, great businesses that people can be proud of. And so that was really the impetus behind this. And there's just some places that don't, it's not as good as it should be. And I think that our commercial districts should be held to the same standard that our residential districts are. And so I think that this goes a long way towards that. So I thank you for putting this together.
I was gonna ask, how do you feel about this language? Is this gonna check the boxes of what you're envisioning?
Yeah, I definitely, I as I walk around uptown, I keep an eye on certain properties and there's some offenders and I think that this does a lot. Now there's gonna be more to come. We can get more specific on certain things, I think, when it comes to zoning, that this can't really, that this isn't appropriate for, but I do feel like this addresses a lot of those, including some of the issues with a couple vacant properties. So I think that this goes a long way towards that, but I think it also comes down to, we need to, Ian mentioned that penalties and fees are in a different area, and that's something that we probably also need to consider if our current penalties are appropriate to make this meaningful, because ultimately I don't think people's behavior changes until it's uncomfortable to remain the same.
When I read this, that was my question about the penalties, right? My opinion with this stuff, which is my opinion with the entire code, is that the penalties have to be very clearly spelled out. Because all of these violations, they're either gonna be paid or they won't be paid. Or they're gonna go to the magistrate, and the magistrate only has our code and the law to work with. So I feel like we need to call that out very clearly. Part of me wanted to see it separate because I wanted to see separate call-outs for these things. And these are not all aesthetics, right? We've had kids break into vacant properties and there's potentially a danger issue in those things. So that needs to be made clear to the property owners. And, you know, I don't know the penalty part of our code, you know, like the back of my hand, but if all it is like a $30 fine for someone breaking into a vacant building where a kid could be seriously hurt, I feel like, you know, we're doing this ordinance change a disservice. So one, I think we probably need to have an exec session on this for the legal side of it. Two, I would say we probably need to bring the judge in on this to understand when problems do happen and they show up on her desk, what tools does she have to dispose of those cases? And are we going to be in a situation where she's like, well, the way you wrote this doesn't really give me a lot of leeway to do anything with these violations? Which we've heard from both of our magistrates in the past 10 years when we've sent them things.
And good points both, and also, what are the fines? You know, what is there now? Because you're concerned about they're not idle, what are they today?
I can answer.
Please.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the way the administrative code is written, for those who want to follow along at home, it's section 104.3 of the municipal code. The general penalty for violations of the code, for a violation of building, housing, property maintenance, health, fire, or public safety is not less than $5 and not more than $1,000. So it gives us the existing code gives us the ability to put any number in there kind of based on, you know, how the violation is seen. And then that also gives us the leeway to assess the maximum, or, you know, find the maximum. And then if they go to the magistrate, also gives the magistrate some leeway too.
Yeah, and our, as you heard from the magistrate when she was here.
Yeah.
That decision is ultimately the magistrate's decision.
Yes.
We can request whatever it is we want to request, but she has the ultimate, I'll say, decision-making power in terms of what that fine actually ends up to be. I think Commissioner Grella makes an excellent point. As we get further through this and we maybe have that exec session discussion, we should pull the magistrate into the conversation so that she's informed and aware, and also gets sort of a sense from the commission in terms of, you know, what we would like to see the sort of the philosophy be behind some of these violations.
Yeah, and
more serious ones.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a big range, right? Like, I'm looking at 104.3.1 now, $5 to $1,000. You know, maybe we can hone in on something, you know, different types of violations that we've seen the last couple of years related to vacant properties or other issues, safety issues. Maybe it's not 5 to 1,000, maybe it's a lower range. I don't mean narrower range, thank you, that's what I meant, yes, thank you.
If the commission wants to look at that, yeah, we can incorporate that either, you know, at a later point in time or as part of this ordinance amendment. You know, I'll defer to the solicitor, you know, as far as actually structuring the ordinance. This was mostly an initial pass at it, and however the commission wants to move forward, we can, you know, just add it into the ordinance. So, you know, we're following commission direction here.
I did have a question, and I apologize, I meant to ask you this last week when I saw this, but, and I'm sure it'll be part of the discussions. The section on landscaping, I understand why it's in here, but it refers to all landscaping in single-family, two-family, and townhouse dwellings shall be maintained, and it talks about plantings shall conform to the approved plant list included in Chapter 16, which is our saldo, and Chapter 20 zoning. Landscape areas shall not include any plants designated as invasive species by the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. That's going to be a challenging provision to enforce.
That's right.
Especially on residential properties. So I would suggest that maybe that's one of the ones we look at. I understand what the intent is, but from a practical enforcement application standpoint, we may need to further refine that a little bit.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, and I would say that may be a case where we want to provide a definition for what a landscaped area is, because in my head, I know there's several properties, mine included, I live in the municipality, that has wooded area in the back of the property. And personally, I would envision a landscape area as more like a planting bed at the front of your house, not the wooded area behind your house. So if there's ivy or weeds or something like that growing back in the wooded areas, that to me would be different than a landscaped area at the front of your property. So I definitely understand your point, and that may be, and I'll work with the solicitor on that, but just off the top of my head, maybe just adding a definition of what a landscaped area is.
Yeah, and most of our residents, I will tell you, are not going to be familiar with the saldo in terms of
Right.
approved plant materials.
Yeah.
They're gonna call a landscaper, they're gonna have a vision for what they wanna do. They're gonna have that person come in and plant, and before they spend time and money, I think we just need to, again, just massage that a little.
And I will also say that was partially built on a recommendation that came from the previous Parks Advisory Board before they were merged, that they were very interested in having specific provisions in the code to make sure that the standards were the same between zoning and saldo, because at one point, one of the board members actually went through and said, hey, you allow these things in the zoning ordinance and these things in the saldo, and they don't always match up. But also that making sure that there was a reference to the invasive species list from the DCNR.
We spend a fairly significant amount of money here on an annual basis, and are fortunate to have volunteers who sort of give us an additional service by going out and removing invasives from our parks. And I've taken a number of calls over the years. Typically, most of those relate to some residents who maybe they didn't even plant it, but maybe they bought a house where somebody else planted bamboo. Well, bamboo can become very, it will grow unchecked, and if
Yeah.
you don't address it, it
Yeah.
very quickly will overwhelm not only your property, but potentially the neighbor's
Yeah.
property. So I understand the reason it's in there.
Yeah.
So.
And I just thought I'd add, since I go to some of these, I mean, I see the back end of compliance, which is after the magistrate. A lot of these end up, not a lot, but some of these citations end up in summary appeals court in Allegheny County. And that's just another tool in the toolbox when it comes to compliance and encouraging compliance, because, you know, if you're faced with either paying the fine at the magistrate, or if you continue to fail to comply, you end up in summary appeals. If you appeal, people don't want to go downtown and do that. So I know I've worked with Jason McCown to, you know, encourage compliance, the goal being compliance, not necessarily fining people.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's been our magistrate's tact in general, and that's certainly the idea behind the ordinance.
We would much rather see those funds reinvested into the property,
Mhm.
bring it into compliance. The fees don't benefit, or the fund, you know, the
Right.
fees.
The point of being
Fines don't
punitive
benefit
is
the
modifying
municipality
behavior.
or the resident, so.
That's almost always my first line with the judge downtown is, we don't want to fine people, we just want compliance.
Great, thank you much.
Yes.
So Lindsay said next steps is that you'll schedule the appropriate exec session and we'll talk some more of this.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll work with Bill once he's back.
Yep. Commissioners, take a look through the rest of the language, bring any questions, next shot. I'll take and
And then once,
Zach and pass through.
yeah, once the commission is good with a draft of, you know, the amendments, we'll do our normal ordinance approval process, put it on an agenda, introduce it, hold a public hearing, and vote
Yeah.
to ratify.
Can you, Commission, I guess, will, maybe by the next meeting, we could throw any additional questions to Keith and Ian, CC Jeff, right, and Phil, thank you. And then maybe at the appropriate time, you can figure out what's best to wrap in the judge.
Sure.
Yeah, when she's available. She may
Right,
go
yeah,
first.
yeah. It's okay.
Yeah, and I'd also, to be honest with you, if we're looping people in, I'd like to also pull the inspections office into that conversation, because they are the agency or the body that's gonna be out there doing.
Right, that's gonna be
Yeah.
critical to this.
Yeah, we just don't want to slow it down to a crawl.
No,
No.
again, I think we, this, and thank you, Commissioner Siegler, you really were sort of the driver for this, but I think
I
we've
just
made.
annoyed Ian with emails.
Whatever it takes. We made progress, so I think this is now just a matter of sort of refining and working out some of the details.
You'll get all the bad candy during budget time, for being annoying.
There's no bad candy.
Ian, thank you again for all your
don't.
work on this, for pulling this together. I think it's very important
Yeah.
in the neighborhood, for the commercial districts, and the general sense of sort of pride that goes from how we feel about a commercial district. So I appreciate you doing this.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
Commissioner Siegler, I will just say that I now know why Ian has not been responding to my emails.
Maybe you should have nicer signatures or something. Maybe you're not very nice in your emails.
I must not be.
All right, we got extra time for boards and authorities, and we didn't do them last meeting, so what do we got?
Let's see, MRTSA, the preliminary budget was proposed to be voted on just before Thanksgiving, but if the preliminary budget gets passed, there'll be a slight reduction in the amount needed from Mount Lebanon for 2026 by MRTSA, reduction of about $6,000. Whereas essentially is almost even given the significant amount we fund, but the fact it's essentially a zero increase, yay. The other is Finance Board. They are working on collecting the costs for our hauling, collecting our trash, and recycling. That was one of the big tasks for them to do, is to get a sense of, well, what does it cost? So we're better educated when the next bids come in to see, well, what would it cost if we did it ourselves? So they're working on that, and then they plan to attend one of the budget workshop sessions. I don't know which day in November, that's. 12th, November 12th. They plan to attend that budget session. So that's the report I got.
MRTSA, one additional thing for MRTSA is that they formed a small group to work through the report that we did that Mount Lebanon funded on what needed to be or could be changed with MRTSA to improve it. They also have some issues of their own that they want to have examined, so that small group is meeting for the first time next Monday. Mount Lebanon is represented on the group.
Seems like overall that was pretty positive.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. It's a good organization. Things can always be improved. One of the things to understand about MRTSA is that funding for emergency services is very difficult. You know, they get some money back from insurance companies and some money back from people who are transported without insurance, but not very much. And they do still need a subsidy to be able to operate, but they provide obviously, you know, life-saving services that we all want, so. And ambulances like fire trucks are phenomenally expensive anymore. And that's the other side of this.
Mount Lebanon is, the largest funder of about 44% of the total bill.
But all of that is based on the number of calls, and that, we have 42 to 44% of the calls, so that's why we're the biggest funder. Yeah, so, yeah. Library, great news, Library of the Year, yay!
It's amazing.
Isn't
Yeah.
it? So exciting. Very cool, from the Pennsylvania Library Association, so that was announced today. The Civic Engagement Board is ramping up for the Residence Academy that starts in January. Application, you can apply now to get in. And also for their Volunteer of the Year Award that happens in the spring at the dinner that I guess we're gonna vote to fund for 2026.
Part of your budget discussions.
Part of the budget discussion, yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh, and last but not least, once again, gonna plug the Meal in the Bag and the Food Pantry. Rachel Windsor from PIO has been a driving force behind this. She and Jackie have been tremendous, along with Keith. We're ramping up very quickly to make sure that those people in our community who need extra help at this time for food will be able to find it from us. So I'll be asking all of you to contribute. Just count on it. Watch your email box, yes. No problem.
Resiliency, in recent meetings, we had a resident come in and present on the idea of eliminating gasoline-powered leaf blowers and the reasons why. Okay.
You know, it couldn't be more important. I hate them, but I can just see every landscaper in town, rising up with, picketing with leaf blowers. That's all. That's the vision that goes through my head.
Yes, agreed. Give a nice presentation on some of the environmental impacts and sound, just the
Sound
sort
is
of neighborhood peace and quiet. So
They're asking for what, banning of?
consideration of banning or at least limiting hours, but to give some consideration to.
I'll send you my email about crying babies. Go from there.
Oh, gosh. Does the city at one point was considering this, I think, yes?
There's a lot of communities that are considering it. I
Considering
think
it, yeah.
CBS Sunday Morning Show actually had a piece on it.
Missed that, but
a couple
okay.
weeks ago.
Yeah,
So it's gaining some traction in some places. There are some legal considerations there as well. There's a cost consideration. There's, again, it's not quite as simple.
no,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
can essentially put an ordinance in place for anything, whether it
Right.
withstands legal challenge. It's a
Right.
separate question.
Sure, yeah.
Are you proposing banning crying babies?
If we ban that kind of stuff, why not? They make more noise.
I want to ban loud cars.
Yeah,
I
your
mean, you got
motorcycle.
lawnmowers, you got motorcycles, you got anything with
Right.
an engine, cars, you know, where do you stop? I don't know.
We'll argue about that later.
Yeah.
Oh, I can hardly wait.
And then Lebo Green gave a presentation considering a plastic bag ordinance similar to the city of Pittsburgh for the advisory board to consider. Then we got an update from staff, Eric and some others on the Hidden Harbor project, the idea of there's some area around the golf course that's generally not being used by the golf course that could be a restoration project. So sort of take back that and remove some invasive species and plant a few things that might be a little more beneficial. So that's kind of what we've been looking at resiliency.
What does the partnership feel about a plastic bag ban?
It hasn't been something that we've discussed at any length. It has come up and we're aware that Lebo Green was bringing that, but it's not something we've had any time for full discussion yet.
Okay, thank you.
We talked about it over the years
Yeah.
in different sessions publicly and an exec session from the legal side of it, and we've not done anything about it. There's been arguments on both sides, and we've had people here to talk about it. At least in the 8 years I've been here, Steve's been here a couple more, I'm sure there's one or two other times, but we've heard arguments on a lot of different sides, but we've not taken any kind of action, ordinance, anything like that. Business communities chatted about it as well, they've come in for comment.
You really hurt the restaurants.
Well, and I think the city actually has at least one dedicated employee that is what they do from an enforcement standpoint.
Really? Holy moly. Wow, wouldn't that be fun? Roll my eyes.
Andrew, you want me to hit on schools or you got stuff?
Mobility Board is moving forward. They continue to, get a lot of feedback on Kelso, on the crosswalk at Kelso. That is a regular topic of concern that residents bring up. We hear a lot about sidewalks, concerned about wanting sidewalks, stop bars, other traffic calming items. Policy, again, you will note at the bottom of the discussion session, the street design policy is out there for a future discussion. That is something that is still in the works, but can be tightened up and wrapped up when it's ready for commission discussion. But overall, I would say that they have been very much doing a lot of great work to help us kind of understand kind of the broader mobility discussions, and where we want to be putting our priorities. The other thing I will note, Connect has been very busy. A lot going on with Connect. We had our legislative session a while ago. Sorry you guys couldn't attend, but it went very well. A lot of great attendance. Several hundred people showed up. Again, we had special speakers from the federal and state representation, regional partners, 40-odd municipalities. So again, a lot of good collaboration, a lot of good, teamwork, happens with Connect right now. We are moving toward standardizing the executive director's performance. Again, it's a nonprofit now, it's no longer part of Pitt. So we are standardizing a lot of the board governance structures. Again, it used to be that the board was literally every elected that was appointed to go there. And so we relied on Pitt to do a lot of kind of the day-to-day oversight. So as we became a nonprofit and we moved out of Pitt, the organization now has a dedicated executive board. So we're putting in a lot of the governance structures that need to be in place for that, like an annual executive director's review, which you guys will all be very familiar with because I use the same template we use for Mr. McGill here. So that is happening. We are also trying to work with other partners, including the local government academy, and others slip my mind, the Southwest PA Project Hub, again, other nonprofits that are funded and supported by the philanthropic organizations in the region to help, local government in various ways. So we're trying to make sure that we're all working on the same page and not,
Cross purposes.
cross purposes or dividing up resources that shouldn't be, divided.
What is the Southwest PA Project Hub?
So I would,
I've never heard of that.
I think the easy way to think about that is, we have Ian.
Yeah.
Most municipalities don't.
Okay.
So how do you think about, your projects that need to get funded that are large in scale, but you don't have that capacity to really think about what the capital stack looks like, what's the legal framework that needs to be put in place? And all those kind of key pieces, again, because this region has so many municipalities and so many of them are so small, they don't have the resources to think at the scale necessary to really engage capital in ways that are going to drive projects. So again, it's trying, that organization is actually working in a 12-county region. Again, and it can be economic development initiatives, it can be, just municipal
Sewers.
projects. Yeah, it can be all a number of things that they're trying to, rally around. So we're coordinating with them. Working with the COGS as well. Trying to, again, make sure that the relationships are developing, because again, the goal of Connect is really to help seed ideas, not necessarily to be the implementer. And COGS are one of the regional partners that we like SHACOG, where we want to see them, standing up more capacity, especially for the smaller municipalities, because they just don't have the resources internally themselves.
Jumping back to the mobility board for a second, or just, we talked earlier about this, we're not in painting season, so the idea for,
Yes.
for it was great. I just heard Commissioner Flynn talking about that crosswalk, like, it's the wrong time of year to be putting paint on the streets.
Yes, yeah, so that obviously that is always one challenge, right? We get complaints or concerns about, traffic safety. Some things can be done very quickly, but again, you don't want to put paint on asphalt this time of year or in the dead of winter. It won't last, and staff need to be focused on other things like leaf pickup or snow removal or other items. So again, this time of year when we do get requests for things like, stop bar painting, obviously that will go on the list for next year. And again, I know I can just tell everybody that we've had a very robust year. Rudy and his team were phenomenal in terms of painting. It was something that I was pushing on last year, and they came out swinging. Obviously, they can't hit every street, every stop bar in the municipality, but they try their best, and hopefully we can just keep knocking them out as quickly as possible.
Cool. Couple things. So our junior commissioner brought up a concern about some interior traffic at the high school and an accident or accidents that occurred there. So I had a conversation with school director about that, and hopefully our junior commissioner and our school directors will get together to talk about some suggestions that the students have for some of that internal circulation, which would be great. The PTA councils are meeting to discuss safe walking routes, and what I think will end up being maybe some comments back on our proposals, or maybe like an alternate, like, hey, we like what you've done, but here's what we think should be a priority kind of thing. So I don't know when we're gonna see anything from that, but we might have something to look at and maybe mesh with the mobility board. Whenever I chat with the PTA councils, they're very aware of Move Lebo and the mobility board, and I always encourage them
Active transportation plan.
to go. So,
Active transportation plan is the place for them to be engaging right now. Because that is where everything is getting consolidated that is related to active mobility on our public rights of way across the municipality.
every time I go to the meetings, which is usually when they have them, I'm constantly bringing up, go to the boards, talk to the mobility board, engage in that process. I think generally they do. A few of them do, certainly through, because there's several of the PTA council members or their executive board members are on Move Lebo, so I think they're aware of that. The school's building back fund balance and ahead of their published schedule, which is good. And the part that they're not overly concerned about, but concerned to the point that it's part of the budget is, some of the funding comes from the state, and that's held up in, budget considerations. So if you have concerns or questions about that, reach out to your state legislator. They're in the process of, doing whatever it is that they're doing on that. At this moment.
We will pass the budget.
Yes, we will.
Just one other general note for the group, you'll see on future agendas, there is an agenda item for AI and local government. Commissioner Flynn has expressed the most interest in the topic, but I am attending a series of 4 lunchtime webinars on AI and local government, everything from procurement to just basically AI 101. The idea of utilizing AI to improve efficiencies here, but also putting some guardrails in place when you start about the things that you should be using or consider using AI for and things that you shouldn't. We have a policy, an AI policy. I've asked Nick Shallis, he sort of sent you what I will call a conversation starter piece that needs a lot more depth to it, but before he spent too much time, wanted to get some general direction from the commission. I've asked him to come with some additional materials for the presentation on the 11th. But these conversations will also obviously factor into some of the budget conversations we're having. And how can we, again, utilize, AI to improve efficiencies and have some beneficial returns.
Could you reach out to the superintendent? The Mount Lebanon School District was one of literally a handful of schools across the country that was working on best practices for AI in schools. And it was moderated by one of the teachers and a group of students, but it's literally one of the very few schools around the country that was looking at best practices, talking with professors, all the different things that we might need to be aware of and factor into policies. I would imagine some of that would be helpful for us, but it would maybe be really cool. I know we were talking about more ways we can, work together. That might be great to have somebody come in and chat with some of the things that they learned.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, just quick from my perspective, my take on this is that I don't want to be prescriptive. What I want from a commission perspective is what are the guardrails that govern around. Again, I firmly believe that you should enable your employees and make sure that they know that it's okay to explore, it's okay to try new things, it's okay to, progress your career and become an expert.
Right.
But there are certain things that we need to be really careful about. And how do we as a commission understand what that framework is? So for me, that's what I want the policy to be.
Yeah, and I look forward to the discussion. I think it's a great idea. The stuff that, I think at the state and the federal level, they will take care of some of the legal law stuff about generative AI and what you can and can't do from adult standpoints, from copying public figures, elected officials, things like that. The stuff that I'm more worried about, which I think has already popped up in the legal realm, are people citing cases that don't exist and things like that. There's a lot of legal implications with the use of AI that we should be aware of and maybe even have policies for how things are being done or not done.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I will personally never use generative AI to provide a response back to a resident.
No, good.
That's my job. I should know what that response is and what it should contain, and I will hold the rest of the staff to that as well. They're all in their positions because they know what they do, they know what the answers are. We don't need generative AI to provide a response back to our residents. So.
All right, that's it, thanks, yeah. Good comments for 15 minutes there, that was great.
Yeah, nice to get a conversation about stuff.
It comes up with case law that doesn't exist. It's completely, it's crazy, isn't it?